I have drawn almost 100 comic books throughout my entire career. In fact, I got my start doing comic books long before I started working in video games. Many of you already know this. A couple of years ago, I brought back my original comic book that I started when I was 16 years old. I brought back Creed, and I recorded the whole process, and I made an entire workshop about this. If you want the whole workshop, you can get it over on my Gumroad channel, following the links below. If you just want like an introduction to digital art or digital coloring, I also have a free workshop over on my Gumroad channel as well. Let's dig into some panel flow. Let's talk about how comic books are drawn. Why do they have panels? How do you control the timing and speed at which a viewer will read your comic book panels? How do you control the flow from panel to panel? And what kind of shots should you choose depending on what kind of scene you're shooting, whether it's action or drama? Let's dig into it. All right, guys. So what we're going to be doing with this one is laying out pages, and I want to talk about I'm going to try to truncate a lot of this into very simple terms, and then we'll dig in a little bit deeper and do some analysis on some existing pages from other comic books to clarify on some points and point out some things that will be beneficial for you to know about how to create panel flow. So first of all, I want to talk about panel flow, page flow. So remember that when somebody is reading your book in the West, in the United States, we start from the left and we move right. That's always the case. Now, once the reader gets to the third panel or along this first panel, their eye immediately goes down to the next row. Our brain kind of like breaks things up into columns. And then from there, it might read across again. Now, if there is another row down here, it will do this. This is the way that we read novels. This is the way that we read books. So our eye flows from left to right and then kind of goes back to the left to read the next column or the next row, I'm sorry, and then back to the left again to read the following row. Now, when you have something like this that has multiple panels, this can be confusing if you don't control it correctly. So for instance, let's say that you've got 3 panels across the top row. Obviously, in this scenario, the reader is going to read this panel first, they're going to skip over to the second panel, and then the third, and then they're going to want to go all the way back to the left to begin reading the next row. Now, let's say that you have a 9-panel page like this. Now, this can be nice for having scenes that are somewhat dull, there's not a lot of action. The size of each of your panels is going to control the speed at which the reader views it. So, for example, this is a good panel layout for something that is just drama. This is like a good panel layout for something like the characters researching a room, or 2 characters are having a conversation, and you've got, character A, in panel 1, and he's got all this to say, and then in panel 2, you've got the other character who's looking down because they're really saddened by what character in the first panel said, and then by the third panel, this guy is like, he's feeling a little bit happy about what he just said because blah, 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 and so like you've got this, communication of dialogue, maybe it's not even heated. It's just like, hey, I'm just letting you know that, this thing happened and you might want to think about it. And then maybe progressively we see, character B, fall into shadow and then maybe like fall off of the page a little bit because they're falling into darkness or something slow is happening. This is kind of a slow moving, kind of boring and unexciting layout, right? But if you want to punch that up, let's say that you want to control a little bit of speed that's going on in your scene, you might want to do something like where you've got larger panels to slow the action down and really give an impact. So I'll give you an example of what that might look like on a typical page. So a page like this might work really well for controlling the speed of things because what we've got are like a couple of quick panels here that lead into a slightly bigger panel, maybe a little bit of more reveal of what is going on, into another quick panel, and then to a bam, big panel. So what you might have or what you might use something like this for in terms of the speed of your own book is if, for instance, you've got like, characters getting punched here, bam. boom, like, let me draw like this is going to be really dumb looking like fists, but like character gets smashed in the face. Ah, no, my face, like big hair, and this is a fist right here, punching him. And then like in this one, in the next panel, you've got, character A is like, going for the gut punch, boom, like quick successions. And then we see like maybe they're stepping closer to the edge. We want a little bit of an establishing shot as like, his foot. In this panel, we'll do his foot like towards the edge of that, bear with me while I'm doodling this in with really crummy little thumbnails. But like his foot is so close to the edge, we see it teetering off of that ledge. And like, this is a building right here. And we see them like getting closer and closer as they're fighting, and his leg is like slipping back. I'm just doing stick figures here so that you get the idea. And his arm is flying up as he's wailing on this dude and he's charging at him. Boom. I do my thumbnails with stick figures like this. And we really see that they're close to the edge of this building. And we get that sense that like there's this city in the background. And by the way, this is a fist going into his back. Oh, and maybe we even see the character like angrily punching at him here as he's preparing his other punch. Again, stick figures. I just do my storyboards with stick figures. And by the way, this is the other character. Oh, boom. He's taking a hit to the chest. This is how I write my books, by the way, just with stick figure thumbnails. But then we see the foot slipping. And then in this panel, this is the panel where we've got the big wow moment. So like they've fallen clear off of the ledge. We are like watching the two of them still falling as his body is. And by the way, we might even break the panel here. As their bodies are falling off of the side. This is the advantage of the digital thing, is that you can just move it around. If you want to transform, hit Control T, only in Photoshop. As they're falling, and then you've got the guy on top that's like still hammering on him. So he's got his arm back. And it doesn't matter if anybody else can see these or understand what you're drawing here. What matters is like that you understand it. He's got his fist like in his face and he's tackling him as they're falling from this rooftop in the distance. And so like you might want to decide, I want to like reframe that a little bit, really make it blow up and like do that as a whole page shot. Something like this. Maybe even rotate them a little bit more. And so like you've got this nice flow of, bam, punch to the face, another quick jab, bam, bam. And then we're zoomed out just a little bit more. You might even want to go more extreme with these. I don't like that this character is about the same size as that. So maybe even this panel, we zoom in a little bit more. That is something that you should keep in mind. If your characters are the same size in every panel, it's not going to look as interesting. So that will work if you're just having two characters having a conversation. But you might want to look at some still shots of film to see how they change up the range. So sometimes you do have those close-ups when you're looking at a character's expression or emotion, and that is something you're going to want to try to incorporate. Paying attention to, for instance, if the character gives a sly grin, maybe we zoom in just to see the side of their mouth, that close for this small panel. But then we zoom way out to see them sitting at the diner and the character is, just stirring their coffee. So we get like a close up of the coffee cup, get a little artistic with it too, but change up your camera angles based on what kind of information you're trying to give the viewer. And most importantly, don't have your characters looking all the same size in every panel. You want that variety and really push yourself to change up your camera angles to try to show the intense action point in the biggest panel. And so you'll see that fist punching with his gut, and then here he's charging at him, and it really looks like he's rushing him. And then right here, you see the foot going over the side of the side of the building right here, and it looks like we'll want to see that that's a shoe. And we'll feel this tension in this moment right here, where we're like, oh my God, what's going to happen? Then the big reveal of them like flying off of the off of the side. And so like this is just a simple way to control a little bit of the speed. This is the big payoff moment. And when I was early in my career, I would do these tiny little panels of the big payoff moment. And then I just have the character standing there looking ominous in the big panel breaking, frame. And that's not the way to do that. You really want to try to get your most important point of action in the biggest panels. One of my favorite page layout types is something where you've just got almost cinema style frames from top to bottom. And this works really well because essentially you just get panel 1, panel 2, and then panel 3. And I love this because there's no confusion. If you've got a lot of action going on, a character's punching and then the character punches back, and then you've got like, a cool headshot here where we really see the emotion of the character. Like this can be a really nice, easy to read page. Anybody who has never read a comic book before is still going to have an easy time reading a page like this. Conversely, you could also do those panels vertically. This is something that, Todd McFarlane used to do a lot back in the day. The early image guys would do this, just doing 3 large panels, vertically on your page. These are so much fun because it's like artsy, you can get all crazy with your action, especially if you've got characters falling and punching or something like that. Or if it's a really dramatic argument between characters, that can be a really fun page layout. If you want time to go very, very fast, you want a lot of very small panels. I never do this. It's just too hard to read. If you're a reader and you're looking at this, this would have to be something for like quick action, like little jabs and punches. And then the next page is a big full page shot. Like that might be nice. Having a big payoff shot down here isn't as rewarding as a whole second page where all these little actions lead up to, a big full page shot of the character, like getting, launched, out of a building or something like that. You know what I mean? Like on the next page, that could be a really nice payoff if you wanted to do all your page layouts this way. So as we've done all these storyboards previously, you can use those and transform them and warp them to construct your panels. And then you want to construct your panels based on all the things that we're talking about in this lesson, so that you've got that Z motion across the page. You're controlling the timing so that the action sequences are small. You might find that you need to fill in panels to like show that the hand is wrapping around the hilt of the blade, things like that. One of the things that I do a lot in Creed Reimaginary is I arc these panels. So sometimes I'll put in these like kind of, it's meant to feel like it's hand drawn. So I'll do these panels that have a lot of these kind of construction because it gives it a little bit of an off-kilter feel and it doesn't look like everything else out on the shelf. So you might want to find ways to incorporate interesting, panel layouts that are unique to the identity and theme of your book. Chris Bachalo is amazing at this. If you look at some of his books like Doctor Strange or a lot of the things that he's always done this. He'll use leaves to frame the panels. And that does lead me to another thing that you might want to consider when you're doing panel layouts is to try to use like elements, like if you have trees in the shot, use them to frame your characters and frame the panels so that you've got like silhouetted elements. You can work this into your thumbnails so that you've got like trees, for instance, working to, this is going to look really, really loose and sketchy, but I'll show you some final pages and how I did this. This is just to communicate the point. Use the frame to showcase and communicate your framing of your character. So like if there's a tree here and then you've got like some branches and maybe you've got some like leaves coming down, these leaves can frame this panel very well. And I use this a lot to control the flow. And you might want to even consider if you've got characters that are breaking panels, have those panels break in such a way that they control where the viewer's eye goes next. So if you've got a character like punching or running or something like that, have his arm breaking the panel right here so that it goes immediately into this frame so that the viewer's eye will lead to this one, not to this one. So the last thing you would want is to break the panel this way, because if you break the panel this way, with the character's limb or a punch or his leg sticking out, then the viewer's eye gets very confused because it goes from here, from 1 to 2, and then it's breaking over here so that your viewer's eye goes to 3, and then it's like, well, where the fuck does 4 fit in? Where does that even fit in? So no, don't do that. No, you want to, if you're going to break a panel, always have it break. Oh man, I should have done that on another layer. Let me fix this. If you're going to break a panel, always have that panel break into the next readable panel that you want the viewer to go to. So now it goes 3 and then 4, okay? All right, so let's take a look at several pages from a couple of books that I've worked on, and then we'll look at some existing comic pages from other pros. Okay, so this scene is not an action scene, but it is a kind of a dark narrative scene. So we have these emotional moments. In fact, we're seeing the rainfall from time to time in some of these panels. We're seeing they work with the flow of the panels themselves. It's monochromatic, so we really get a feeling that this is kind of maybe a memory or something like that. But our eye is definitely going to go here first. Our eye is definitely going to read this first panel first. The intention with this was that you would read this word balloon, and then immediately there's this word balloon here. I didn't have a word balloon here because I wanted the viewer to go immediately to this panel next. So we've got panel 1, and then there's immediately a panel 2. This could have only been done better if there was a word balloon here that branched off from this one to really guide the viewer's eye into panel 3. But I didn't do that, and it's okay, because the average person is still going to read 1, 2, 3, and then they'll immediately go to panel 4, which is mostly silhouetted, and I did that on purpose. I wanted it to be simple, but technically this could have been done better if this panel were the larger panel amongst these 3. But I did, however, do something here where the character's mood, super moody shot, he's in dark shadow, intentionally shadowed, not highly rendered, not super detailed, it's kind of moody. She's got a little bit of light on her, and of course this rain is coming down, pulling our viewer's eye this way. So are the viewers going to go from this word bubble to this word bubble to here and then down? And then we're going to see his face after that. So what we're reading, we're going to feel a little sad because the character's feeling a little sad about things that are happening in the dialogue. And then we're going to get that payoff moment of the character kind of moping a little bit. Now, that's not exactly the feeling you want to always give your readers, but in this case, the panel flow works pretty well. Now, when do you do a big payoff full page spread like this? I found that the best time to do it is when you want to really establish something magnificent, something amazing, something wonderful. In this case, Creed has this unique dream world kind of a landscape. So I wanted to do something that felt like we're in his mind. You know, we're seeing how this image that he had drawn is now being entwined with these symbolic coils of a twisted dream world. You know, we're seeing the fish float by, which is weird and interesting. And that also, the character is kind of walking off into the distance. He's not even really present. It's like he's walking away from a part of his memory that's just going to be taken over and consumed by the dream world, right? So this was a big payoff moment and also kind of weird and also sets up a little bit of what the world is about. So I chose to use this as a full page shot with great intention because we're about to go into a totally different mood and vibe and energy for the book. I'm going to skip ahead a little bit, but here you can really see that page layout that I was talking about, where I do this a lot with this book, where I've got panel 1, and then there's really just like a horizontal line going to panel 2, a horizontal line. These are framed almost like cinema screenshots or cinema style storyboards down to the big payoff moment. Notice that I've got the character really charging into him. The only thing that I regret about this page is that I should have probably flipped it. I started with this flow going here. Let me get rid of all these red lines. I started with this page, this panel with the action flowing toward him. He catches the ball, and then he looks beyond him to the right, over his shoulder to see Mary and her friend chatting. And then he turns back around to face the reader, but gets immediately, I think he should have gotten shoved the other direction. Gosh, now that I think about it, I wonder if I could flip that. So as I was recording this, I realized, you know what? I'm just going to go ahead and flip that so that it has a better flow to it. When we're really paying attention to how these panels are flowing, this last panel should be coming in, the action should be coming in from the left and really slamming him off to the right. I think that just has a much better flow and a much better payoff to it. So now let's look at how this is flowing. How is it looking? We've got panel 1. Let me create a new thing here so we can write some notes, and we'll write it in red so you could really see what I'm talking about. So we've got panel 1, nice, heads up butthole coming at you. Panel 2 got good flow, looks off to the right, sees the girls, got to do something showy. Yeah, that's cool. Maybe I want to get in there with a little saturation on CJ's face so that we really see him. I don't want things to look muddy, you know? So let me do that real quick. I'm going to create a little saturation layer, and then we'll do like a bright, little bit more green on him. That'll pull some attention to him. And then we see maybe something in the way of a slam dunk. Chicks dig athletic guys. No. We did break the panel, but it kind of works okay specifically because it is there's only one panel left in the whole page. And that's this big bad boy right here. Pretty much we know that this is Mark. We know that we've got action coming back in this way. So what happens here, it's kind of nice. You've got this action flowing that way, and then he looks over, sees the girls, turns his attention back. So we kind of get this flow of like feeling like he's turning back. He's about to charge a little bit, and that's when, boom, just coming in from just like hitting him hard. I even did a little bit more of a loose, sketchy art style, and you could do this sort of a thing, to create a little bit more of a feeling of impact. It's something that I do. I want to do a lot more of this loose, sketchy stuff in the moments of action. So you've got a lot of these like squiggly lines, and you'll notice the paper texture, and even this spatter effect is like just real messy because he's getting hit with this massive impact. So I think that looks just a lot better, just way better, like 10 times better. So this page isn't from Creed, this page is from Twilight Monk, but I thought it was a really good representation of the panel flow that I was talking about. If we look at panel 1, we've got his foot is charging forward. I did this almost like a keyframes for an animation. We've got a really simple background. Things are pretty like solidly rendered here, just in terms of like simplicity, but our eye is immediately looking at this character that's got a high contrast behind him of the white, right behind him. We see him go into a little bit of a stride, and then we see him ripping in. Like you see the angle and the flow of his body. There's even like some word balloons. Boom! And then he jumps in the air with like a medium-sized frame. Lots of angles like pointing him at what's happening, what's about to happen. We see this intense look of dread and fear in this character's eye. We even see it's like crackling, like there's loose sketches around his eye, and his mouth is open. He's like, oh my God, it's gonna happen. It's gonna freaking happen. And then when we get to the next page, it's boom, like just an explosion of energy coming out from the impact, where he kicks through the pillar, just shattering all kinds of like weird shadowy creatures. And if you really look close, you can see the beak. You can see the beak of that thing, boom, right here. So I thought this sequence was really powerful for communicating what I was talking about earlier, where we've got a nice, quick succession of frames progressively getting bigger until the big payoff moment, a full page shot. And I think this could have even been a lot more of a dramatic pose, but having or a dynamic pose, but having this build up to a big impactful moment like that, I think was a good payoff. And so like that's what I'm talking about when I'm talking about page layouts and panel flow. Bam, I did it. This scene is from Creed Reimaginary Book 2, and you can definitely see the panel flow that I was talking about. So we've got our big panel 1. Let me get a nice fat brush. Panel 1, panel 2, panel 3. You can also see that flow of word balloons is supporting this. There's nowhere else to go, baby, except panel 4, which is the lower half of the page, which is the big calming moment. That's the slower motion moment. So we're actually seeing a nice establishing shot of the character flying off of the side of the waterfall here. We see him floating. Maybe I want to hit that with a little bit more red in the final. I'm not sure. So that you actually see him more as a focal point. We've got all these angles flowing downward. It might have only been better if these waterfalls were kind of pointing this ways a little bit more into this one. And then this kind of like pointing down that way also guides our eye down. And then we've also got CJ here with a little hit of green on him. His head is literally an arrow and it points directly to Mark. And then we've got this nice calm moment, like where he's laying in the dark water. In fact, if we zoom out and look at the entire sequence, we've got that cinematic widescreen panels as we see Mark running. The angles of the shots are also communicating a pretty immediate flow. We've got panel 1, panel 2, panel 3, panel 4. There's no tiny little panels, but there's a good amount of like drama that's happening through the dialogue that's happening over top. Imagine this is like narration from Lainey. And then we go into the next page. Nice big flip. So we had all those tiny little panels, not tiny, but like these panels, just 1, 2, 3, 4 panels on that page. And then boom, he like trips right as he goes over the side of the waterfall, right? This is almost happening like slow motion as we're hearing her explain why she's out to get him. God, I love how that water turned out, by the way. And then boom, we still see, we're getting a little bit speedier action going as we've got more panels going on here, but this breaks it up nicely so it's not all horizontal panels. We've got a couple of nice vertical panels as we're seeing him fall down the waterfall, and we're seeing him really take a dive here, and then lands, and then it goes to slow motion. And then we go to like a big slower 3-panel shot. You'll notice I started out really distant here so that we really don't know what that is, but we're curious. We want to know. And then we zoom in a little bit more. It starts to look a little bit like a couple of dudes hanging out in a boat. And then we get the nice, really big breaking the panel shot. We see Henry Lamplight's hand here as he's breaking over that shot. And then we see the setting that they're on this little boat. He's got his lamp out. And then I go back to that cinematic panel flow, of the horizontal cinematic panel flow. And this, by the way, this book is almost done at this point. So what you're watching is basically my reviewing, just going through as I'm like in those final stages, just making sure that every panel flows really well. I get back to that horizontal cinematic panel flow here. This part's interesting because you've got this close-up shot of his eye. It's almost like I was imagining like if we were watching a film, sometimes you just get that close-up shot of the character's eye as they're really thinking, like it's really hitting him what he's looking at in this particular moment. And he's about to like flash into this memory. So his eye would almost look like we're seeing the reflection of this apple distorting in the reflection in his eye a little bit. And then this is just a little artistic choice to show the little doodly apple here. And then we're suddenly in a monochromatic memory. And that's why it's all done in like sepia tones and warm hues. And this is also intentional with the little sketchiness going on. So you see the black and white line art. I really like that in my own work, but you might not like it in yours. I use it as a narrative element to draw your attention to the focal points, so the areas that are lit, but then the areas that are unimportant almost fade into black and white. But that's neither here nor there in terms of story panel flow. It does help to control the flow of panels using color and saturation. So for instance, if you wanted to really draw the viewer's eye to a specific spot on the page, you could really brighten that up with a bright saturation. But we're not going to dig into that too much into this particular lesson. So this is, I wanted to pull up some comic pages to just discuss a little bit of what's working. So this is a page from Chris Bachalo and Tim Townsend's Spider-Man, Amazing Spider-Man. You'll see exactly what I was talking about. So you've got your smaller panels here, panels 1 and 2, right? You got panel 1, panel 2. He's using 0 lines between the panels, which is an interesting choice. They're using color also to control the viewer's eye a little bit. And also, look at this. Chris Bachalo is a genius at this, at page flow, even when given really difficult challenges, and I'll explain that in the next page. But you'll notice that you've got this flow here from the panel he gets it. See that big backwards Z on it? Like that's because, is it a backwards Z? I guess it's a number 2. It's a backwards Z because we've got bright red, bright red, bright red, and then all this is pointing this flow down to this panel. And then this panel even has like a little arrow from the front of that snow shovel pointing it literally to the next one. The big yellow thing grabs our attention, and then we've even got a little bit of an angled flow going off of the page here. So these are not important details of action, you know. But this page, I think, is brilliant. If you're going to do, you know, what is this, 6 panels? A 6-panel page. You know, it's brilliantly balanced. So I love that one. Some of his other pages, though, not too crazy about this, but the only way they made it work is by making it monochromatic in foreground elements. This is brilliant by giving him a little bit of color here. By the way, this is from another page. Pay no attention to that. In fact, let me get rid of that so we're not distracted by it while we're discussing this. These are just scans from the comic, and it's mostly just for educational purposes. He's also doing a little bit of that, like where he keeps this team anyway, it's multiple people working on it, but they keep some of their line art black and white because it gives it a little bit of a visual interest, and it's unique, and especially for dreamy stuff. But this page, look at how many panels are on here. You got 1, 2, you don't even barely tell what's going on in that one. Panel 3, getting sucked into this thing, but brilliant at this. Look at that panel flow, his arms pointing right at the next panel. So that's panel 4. Panel 5, there's nothing pulling our eye over here. So this is another reason why I don't like this, but I realize sometimes your writer just gives you too many damn panels to work with. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 freaking panels. 10 panels on this page. It's absurd. Never do that. I would never do that. You could do that if you want. The only way it works is that it's mostly monochromatic. There's only like 4 colors going on this whole page. And of course it ends on the big finish of the bright red. So it pulls our attention all the way through till we get to that bright red. When we look at the panel flow though, look at this. This is our panel flow. This is how we're expecting viewers to read this. A non-comic book reader will look at this and go, I don't even know what the fuck I'm looking at. So I don't do stuff like this because it's overly complicated, but kudos to Bachalo for at least making some kind of a sense out of it. You know, just I wouldn't do page layouts that way, even though it does functionally, technically work. This page, colors are fighting everything. It helps that there's a white background on this, but there's the panels work. The colors are fighting the panel flow. So I get that we've got to have the green window up here, but most of my pages, you'll notice if you compare this to what I do, I tend to go a lot more monochromatic with background elements. And then when you get to a foreground thing, I would have done all of this bottom half done in a different color scheme and kept this mostly monochromatic at the top half. Panel flow is 1, 2, 3, 4. And like, I guess it works in terms of the flow itself. You notice like he's got his arm is actually pointing to this panel. And then we've got a little bit of a flow in his cloak here that pulls us to the next panel, which is a big emotional, like next page is going to be a big reveal. You can tell, what's he looking at? You know what I mean? That kind of a thing, which is nice, but the colors are really fighting on this. And I think it's because you got these blues with these purples, and then you got greens behind it, which is an okay color scheme. But when we get to the color lessons, you'll understand why I don't like that. So I also would not do the colors this way. This page could have worked pretty well in its composition, but this right here, it would have been better if this, let me just do it. Like, it would have been better if that was solid black, that was black. Like, then we really see that that's a separate panel, and it just makes it a little bit easier to read. I hate to fix anybody else's work like this because I don't mean any disrespect to the original artist. I just, like, the way that I do things is so different. And then I would have done maybe something like this between the two panels, or yeah, so that we can really see that that's a separate panel. And do that over here as well. And I'm doing it messy, but hopefully you can tell what I'm talking about. And then I would have done like 2 panels here. And I don't like to break those word balloons over the center like that, but sometimes you have to control the flow to the next panel. Anyway, that's how I would have done this page, just to make it a little bit more readable. By the way, these pages are really just random. I'm not I didn't pick these out specifically because of particular lessons, but I thought it would be useful to dig into them. This is something, Mignola, by the way, great storyteller, fantastic, but he does so many pages like this that are just headshots and dudes standing around. And it bugs me, but when you get to the action sequences, it's pretty damn impressive and cool. But man, this dude's made a career out of having characters stand around. Don't get me wrong, I love Mignola. Please do not, hate me for saying, being critical of him. There's some things that he does that I wouldn't do, and I'm trying to evaluate why. Why would he do it this way, and why I don't care much for it. So this does work, though. You've got panel 1, panel 2, panel 3. You see, because you got this nice long wide shot, and it's a really good way to set up some story and character dialogue. But look at this. All this dialogue is coming from some dude who's not even on screen. Are we meant to pay attention to their faces here? Why is that like that? I'm being too critical. Anyway, then we go into panel 4, panel 5, panel 6. Obviously, these are things that they're commenting on that are important. Panel 7, panel 8, and then Hellboy's response, stoic response. We need a whole panel for that. Do we? Do we really, Mike? Do we? I would have rather not done it that way, but I also don't write stories the way he does. He tends to write a lot of, he spends more time on a script than his artwork, and I don't disagree with that. But when it works really well, when he does it really well, check this out. Look, panel 1, setting up. He's got a wrench. He's obviously scolding him. You could tell what's kind of going on without even looking at it. We focus in to see oh man, so he's got a device on his hand. Target up. Okay. And then we see, it's kind of a weird shot because this is all black behind him, but this would have been better if we just saw the silhouette of his legs sticking out. And then solid color for the sky. Didn't even bother to paint it, but that's okay because you know what? It's got this nice flow to it. He's falling, and click, click, click. It's not working. Oh my God, full page. Even though he's clicking the thing, I wonder if this panel should have been up here. He's click, and then it's not working, and then panic. And then we got a little panel at the bottom of his eye going, oh my God, I'm gonna die. That would have been pretty cool. So there you have it. There's a basic introduction to how I pace my panels when I'm designing pages for comic books. If you'd like to dig in way deeper, if you're really serious about drawing your own comic, my Making Comics workshop will walk you through the entire process. You can actually get a printed copy of your book and give it to your friends. And it doesn't cost that much, really. There's print-on-demand services. I walk you through the whole process from how you come up with your idea all the way down to getting it printed and then having a physical copy. Really great if you want to take it to comic book conventions and sell them there or give them away to people that you just want to develop your skills as a storyteller, as a comic book artist. You can also pick up the Creed Reimaginary digital edition over on my Gumroad channel as well. And of course, I'm here on my YouTube channel just about every week or every other week with videos about how to develop your skills, how to get a job with your art. That's what my focus is on. I've helped probably hundreds of artists get careers in art, whether it's in video games or comic books. And so I want to help you too. So please do subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next video. All right, ciao.